Hey, what's happening? Tim Warner here. Let me adjust my volume. Today, I just had an idea about 2 minutes ago. Record a YouTube video, all right, fine. What's the subject? How about learning style? It's certainly applicable to the information technology industry because, as you know, if you work in IT, you, by necessity, have to adopt an always learning, eternal student perspective. And given that, and the fact that you're constantly learning, my biggest suggestion for you is to put some thought and practice and time into self-reflection to figure out how you learn most efficiently. I find in the past couple decades of my work as a technical trainer, when I ask students, many times they don't think about how do I actually learn. They just dive in. That seems to me a wasted opportunity where you can shorten your learning curve. I'm a huge fan of the concept of the learning curve. And if you're not familiar with it, the idea is, I wish I had a graphic to share with you now, but the way that the chart works is that per time that you're investing into learning a new skill, concept, whatever, there seems to be a significant time investment where your skill doesn't really start to dip up. That's the front end of the learning curve, and that's the most difficult part of learning. Once you reach critical mass, once connections start to be made in your brain, and it starts to make sense what it is that you're learning, you'll find that that same time investment projected into the future has a much steeper curve to it, so you're learning far faster than you did originally. I'm a huge proponent of this. And one pro tip for shortening your learning curve is for you to figure out, how do I learn most effectively? I've got my assistant ChatGPT in front of me right now, and I asked it in my prompt for the most, what did I say? What are the most commonly identified learning styles? And it came back with the Vark model, V-A-R-K, which I was expecting, honestly. And let's run through those briefly and think about them in your own context, situations where you've learned the most easily. V is visual. These individuals prefer to learn through seeing. They benefit from visual aids like diagrams, charts, and pictures. I'm certainly a visual learner. I like to think about what it is I'm learning in visual terms. I'm a big fan of mind mapping, if you've ever heard of that, where I can write down concepts and relate them out in sort of a snowflake or spider web fashion, and it's nice to see the interrelationships between those concepts. Vark A is auditory. These learners prefer to learn through listening. They benefit from lectures, discussions, and other types of auditory information. I'm also an auditory learner. I find that once I see something initially, like let's take, for example, I need to learn a new topic or a new product or whatever, and I dive into Pluralsight and watch some video courses. If it's brand new to me, it's important that I watch the training and listen to it simultaneously because it's new and by definition, I don't have a mental image yet. Once I've done that, I can listen to other training, YouTube, Udemy, whatever, or I could re-listen to the Pluralsight course just listening to the audio. I do that a lot when I'm driving, walking, exercising, whatever. And again, as long as I have that visual in my head, I can follow along just fine. And from that point, auditory is fine. And a benefit of auditory for some learners is the two-way dialogue when you're working with a live instructor. I think I mentioned that in my last video, that some learners really need that back and forth interaction with peers as well as their instructor, whereas others can do that or not, kind of take it or leave it. That's how I am. Or go to the other extreme where they're fine being an autodidact or just teaching themselves. Vark R stands for reading. These individuals prefer to use text-based input and output. I'm a reader as well. As you can see, I'm a multi-dimensional, multimodal learner, and I don't know if I'm a unicorn or if I'm in the majority. I have no idea. I'd like to know, actually, where you fall with the Vark model and your own preferences. K is kinesthetic, and this means hands-on activities. And when we think of IT, I'm thinking of hands-on coding. If you're doing hardware, taking a screwdriver in hand and doing actual work. One nice thing about IT nowadays is that a lot of the physical work you can model in a simulation. In fact, I have an Xbox game called PC Repair Simulator. It's actually pretty on point in terms of doing bench repair, and you're doing it all from the comfort of your television set. So those are the 4 main learning models, and don't be surprised if you find that you resonate with more than one, like I do. I resonate with all 4, and that's important for me because in the work I do, I have to learn very quickly. Because as a tech trainer, and this is something I think is shared among most skilled or seasoned IT trainers, is that you, by necessity, to survive, you've got to be able to think and process very quickly and spontaneously, because in a classroom setting, you've got live interaction, so you're getting questions that you didn't anticipate from students. And a lot of times those questions will press on areas that I realize live without a net, I'm a little weaker on. And it's nice that when I'm presenting a class that runs multiple days, because I then have that night to cram and come back the next day. I think that's something that every instructor should do, and not all of them do. When they're not able to answer a question live, to research an answer and get back to that learner in one way or another. It's become more difficult to do that because my students are worldwide and I teach at a pretty high velocity. So what I normally will do is tell my learners that I'll get an answer and post it on my Twitter, for example, you see. So once you've identified your main learning style, what if you determine that you're mainly a reader and you like text-based input and output? You read and you write, and that's how you synthesize new information. It's then a case of curating and cultivating the highest impact learning materials to suit your need. Now, if you're a reader, what I would recommend is focus less on print books and more on online sources. I made that point in one of my YouTube videos a little while ago, where I don't believe, my contention is that information technology, at least most of it, is not a good fit for print media because the technology moves too quickly. What's good, though, is that there's such a large corpus of regularly updated online content. I know in the Microsoft community, there's the Microsoft Learn documentation, which are top-notch. I can attest to that because I worked for them for a little over a year. There is in the Microsoft technical community an army of MVPs who have as part of their self-directed motivation to share their knowledge with the community, oftentimes through written form, through blogs. If you're more of an auditory learner, you may find that YouTube's not too bad as long as you can find the right course. That's the most of the effort with YouTube, is finding the right instructor that you can resonate with. And that also would apply to any of the paid computer-based training vendors like Pluralsight and LinkedIn Learning and O'Reilly and so on. It's a question of finding an instructor with whom you have some kind of connection that you can learn well from them. If you're more of a hands-on person, then you're looking to get your hands dirty, aren't you? Coding, if you're a programmer or interested in becoming a programmer, you're definitely in great hands. Go to codecademy.com. That's the one I have a subscription to, but there's plenty of online learn to code websites. If you're looking for the human touch and you're willing, or if your employer is willing to sponsor you, the sky's the limit in terms of in-person training providers. I would ask you to hesitate about the mills, the training mills like New Horizons. I say that because, well, I did teach for them for a while and had a pretty negative experience, and other New Horizons instructors around the country here in the US have told me similar things. It's a question of vetting your training provider. Now, if your company's sponsoring the training, you may not have a choice, you see, but that can be a tremendous waste of your time to devote entire days to training, and then the live instructor is poor. Nah, that doesn't do anybody any good. This is a reason why I'm a huge proponent of live online training and pre-recorded online training. The pre-recorded is great because you can consume it at your leisure wherever and whenever you want. Live online is good from an instructor's standpoint because I have learners literally around the whole globe. And I could have somebody who's physically down the street from me in my class and somebody on the other side of the world in Adelaide, Australia in my class at the same time interacting. And that is beautiful. There's nothing like that. It's great. And the blended approach of live online means that it gives people the flexibility to tune in from wherever they might be. They don't have to allocate entire days or weeks to traveling to a training center. And also there's the recording of the session. So if a learner had to step away to take a business call or something, they can review the part of the training that they missed by watching the recording. I'm a huge fan of that. Well, it looks like we've reached the end of the road for this session. I hope this meditation on learning styles was in some way useful for you. We'll keep on trucking. Thanks a lot. See ya.